Lainey also mentioned in her email to us that she's struggling with being a passive parent who gives the kids way too much power. She shared that she sometimes canceled plans with her fiance when her girls threw a fit, and she allowed them to sabotage their time together.
Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your stepfamily from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds,
Understanding the kids' perspective,
romance and partnership,
parenting with great teamwork.
and yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of stepfamily life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want.
Well, hey, welcome and thanks for joining us today. We're continuing our conversation from last week's episode, where we shared some ways that you can respond when one or more of the kids are refusing to blend.
Yeah.
It's a tough situation.
It is.
We're going to look at one more potential piece of that challenge. And these two episodes really came as a result of you, our Blended Family Coaching Show community.
Yes.
And it came a while back from one of our listeners who asked us to talk about this topic by sharing her story with us over on our website. Now, we love getting some suggestions for show topics because we're here to meet you where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely.
In your real life story. And we want to bring both hope and practical strategies that will help you in your unique blended family. So maybe you're listening and thinking, gosh, I'd love to hear what Mike and Kim have to say about my challenge, right? Then we want to invite you to share that with us. All you need to do is head over to mikeandkimcoaching.com/share and let us know how we can help.
Yeah.
We personally read every single suggestion that we receive, and we do our best to work it into the show in a way that brings value. So don't hold back. Just let us know how we can best support you by heading over to mikeandkimcoaching.com/share. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes to make it really easy for you. And of course, we always appreciate your ratings and reviews over on Apple Podcasts or wherever platform you might be listening on that allows for ratings. So please take a moment and just give us that feedback. We'd be really grateful.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Now, like Mike said, we're continuing our discussion from our last episode, and let's just quickly recap that discussion real quick. Now, we explored how to show up well by doing your best to understand the path through rejection as you remain faithful in sending those important and powerful messages to the kids. And we shared 3 messages that the bio parent should be sending and 3 for the step parent to send to the kids. And they're all messages that help keep your focus in the right place. We also talked about the benefits of learning the 5 love languages and the most effective ways to show love and care to the kids. And at the foundation of all of this, we shared the need to build empathy for the kids' perspectives, as well as being a reliable connection for them to process through some of those difficult emotions they might be struggling through.
That's great.
And of course, you'll want to refrain from pushing your own agenda, right? That's really hard.
Oh, man, really? I got to refrain from that?
Yeah. Your perspectives are going to be different from the kids, and that's okay. It just means you might need to readjust some of your expectations and be really, really patient as you journey through a difficult season. Which, remember, it's only a season. Look at the bigger picture. So this was all good stuff to get your mind around and to start implementing into your dynamics, and really practical as well. So if you missed last week's episode, we'll put a link in the show notes so you can check that out. It's called At a Loss and Feeling Defeated Because the Kids Stubbornly Refuse to Blend.
I think we've all kind of felt that at some point.
Yeah, I think so. So we want to pick up where we left off to focus on another aspect of why kids might reject your new partner and struggle to accept the choice you've made to remarry. And we'll explore how you can respond in loving ways that preserve your relationship with your kids and at the same time allow you to move forward through the blending process. So let's go ahead and dive into that.
Sounds good. All right. You know, one of the things that Lainey, our listener who submitted this request, shared with us that really stood out, she said that following her girls' negative response to her engagement, she talked to the girls and just tried to understand their reaction. And they shared with her that they were hurt that her fiance had not asked them for permission to propose to their mom.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Now, Lainey also shared that she and her partner had decided together that asking for the girls' permission was a risk that they just didn't want to take because of the hurtful and kind of ugly responses that had already occurred when Lainey told them that he had bought an engagement ring.
Yeah, because what happens if they say, no, you can't have our permission?
Then you're stuck going, well, thanks anyway, but we're doing it anyway, right? But you know what's interesting is that Lainey's girls believe that they're in a position to grant permission for their mom to remarry. And I think a lot of kids feel that way. And it can be really challenging. And while we want to be mindful of how our kids feel about our decisions, and we also want to be sensitive to their perspective, the question in this dynamic is, why do the kids feel that their permission is something that needs to be given? Like, what might have transpired in the relationship with mom over the years, and what are the relational patterns that could have set the stage for this dynamic? And so that's kind of what we want to explore today.
Yeah. Now, this is a very delicate yet influential dynamic that's at play here, and it can create some unforeseen challenges. And that's when the balance of power in the home has shifted more towards the kids as opposed to the adults. And this can be a common dynamic that begins to emerge in single-parent homes, right? Kids can often have a lot of say in day-to-day decision-making with their single parent, right? They often influence decisions that their parent makes on a daily basis, everything from what foods are stocked in the pantry to bedtimes to where they'll go on vacation, all kinds of decisions.
Yeah, all seemingly innocent things, right?
Right. And these things are related to how the household functions. And many times, the single parent will just naturally give the kids quite a bit of power in lots of little things because, of course, they want their kids to be happy and content, right? This can be especially true around things the parent might not have very strong preferences around. So they just kind of, they simply let the kids kind of take over and call the shots around the seemingly insignificant things. It can start very subtly, naturally, and certainly unintentionally, but nonetheless it happens. And if the single parent has been struggling with guilt or fear, which many single parents do struggle with, I certainly did, this whole dynamic tends to get even more magnified. And this kind of dynamic can also happen when a single parent tries to take on the role of their kid's friends or just wants to be their buddy. And the parent ends up giving up some of their own parental authority with their kids. This was definitely the situation in my home when I was a single mom. My daughter Annika had a lot of power, and she knew that all she had to do was just mildly object or even just whine a little, and I'd give in and let her have her way. I'd really given up my power, and I wasn't much of a parental guide for her. And of course, like any child would do, she took full advantage of that dynamic and kind of claimed a lot of power around what she wanted.
Sure. Why not?
Yeah. But ultimately, it wasn't good for her. It wasn't good for me, and it certainly wasn't good when we started blending. It caused a lot of problems. And the tricky part around this is that all of those little moments where we give in to the kids might not seem like a big deal at the time. And sometimes when we're single parents and just trying to hold it all together, that seems reasonable. But over time, it can become a very real problem, as we found out in our home. Because when the time comes to remarry, it can become an even bigger challenge. Like I said, it gets magnified. So let's talk about how this plays out and why these circumstances kind of set the stage, so to speak, for the kids to respond so strongly against the parent who has now fallen in love and wants to remarry.
We're so excited to let you know about something brand new we've created just for you.
We've realized that with so many episodes available here on the show, it might feel a bit overwhelming to find the topics that matter most to you. That's why we've created a simple tool for you to receive a personalized playlist focused on your current struggle or your biggest challenge.
That's right. It's called the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz. You'll answer just a few questions, and based on your responses, we'll email you a curated custom playlist of episodes that are specific to you.
This simple quiz will direct you to the most impactful episodes that pertain to you personally and keep you on track in your journey of discovery, learning, and growth. So, scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes for this episode and click the link to take the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz today.
Okay, let's get back to the discussion. Yeah, that's good. Let's jump into that. When kids have had a sense of power and control in the home and they're used to having things go their way the majority of the time, that often goes hand in hand with a single parent who might be reluctant to set and enforce clear boundaries or give appropriate consequences around poor behavior.
Yeah.
That kind of summarizes what you were just sharing. Mm-hmm. When this is a case in the single parent home, then the kids can start adopting the attitude of, well, I expect things to go my way, and those boundaries don't apply to me.
Yeah.
I can say or do or demand whatever I want.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a child with too much power. And this child will most likely reject the idea of anyone new entering into the family dynamic. Mm-hmm. Now, brain science tells us that the prefrontal cortex of the brain is not fully developed until around age 25. So that's when kids, or really young adults at that stage, finally become fully capable of real higher level thought processes.
Yeah.
They're able to respond with good, reasonable judgment and manage impulse control appropriately. But until then, kids need their parents to guide their behavior and help them to learn these important aspects of life. And that includes setting healthy boundaries.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when a child is used to having some power in the home and hasn't experienced consistent, clear boundaries, it's understandable why they'd push back and resist giving up any of their power and control when the parent makes a decision that they don't agree with,
sure.
like bringing new people into the family structure.
Mm-hmm.
And new people that will most likely have their own preferences and ways of doing life that will probably be different than theirs, right? There could be some challenges.
Threatened. Yeah.
For kids, that's how it's perceived, as a threat. No matter how great these new people are, they are a threat to the kids' way of doing life.
That's right.
Now, this could mean, of course, that they'll lose some of their power that they've been used to having, and they might be forced to give up some of what they really like in their own home.
Sure.
Is it any wonder why this can cause so much relational tension? This is a hard place for everyone.
Yeah.
And opposition to their parents' decision to remarry is just a natural response at this point for a lot of kids. These kids have a lot to lose, and from their perspective, it's difficult for them to see any upside.
Sure, yeah, that's right.
And what we often see in cases where the kids have a high degree of power is that the adults can feel powerless. They feel continually defeated by these kids, right?
Yeah.
And, Lainey also mentioned in her email to us that she's struggling with being a passive parent who gives the kids way too much power. She shared that she sometimes canceled plans with her fiance when her girls threw a fit, and she allowed them to sabotage their time together. She shared that after lots of work and encouragement, she's been holding firm boundaries around this lately. Way to go, Lainey.
Good job.
Yeah, she's making steps forward, but she shares not very quickly.
Hey, this is a
so hard
process, right? Well, what do we always say? Don't confuse slow progress with no progress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Lainey, we want to thank you for being so open about your struggles, and we want to tell you that you're not alone. I struggled with this myself, and this is a common dynamic. We commend you for taking those steps forward. It can be really difficult. But in the long run, it's going to be worth all your hard work and effort.
Yep, there will be a payoff.
Yes. So if your kids have too much power and maybe they haven't experienced appropriate boundaries and are used to being in control of things, well, what can you do at this point, right? Because things probably feel pretty hopeless if that's where you're at.
Yeah. And this is a really big topic.
Huge.
It's one that we coach couples around for months, actually, supporting them in just trying to get beyond their own personal barriers and challenges and start strategizing different ways that they can move forward as a team. We often coach the bio parent around how to regain some of that parental authority and begin to integrate healthy boundaries with their kids.
Yeah.
In other words, we help them get into the driver's seat and lead the family forward while gently easing the kids into a more appropriate position in the family structure. Yeah. This takes a lot of hard work and determination, but it's necessary if you want to decrease the amount of inappropriate power that the kids have and teach them how healthy boundaries work, which is really one of the best things that you can do for kids.
Absolutely.
And for their future, as well as your whole family's future.
Yeah, everyone
really
needs to learn boundaries.
Yeah, so clearly we can't fix all of this for you in one episode,
No.
but we would like to offer some simple do's and don'ts for you to navigate through what might feel like a constant power struggle in your home.
Yeah.
So let's just dive into some do's and don'ts. Now, we're primarily focused on blended families who still have children that are living at home. But if your kids are adults and maybe they're out of the home, I want you to know these principles still apply. However, you might need to apply them just a little bit different than what we're discussing today.
Yeah.
So you need to learn the principles. If you need help figuring out how to apply it in your unique situation, give us a call. Shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with the do's. Here's the things we want to do. First of all, learn everything you can about boundaries. If you've had a difficult time setting and enforcing boundaries with your kids, then chances are you may have a difficult time setting boundaries in other relationships as well, with extended family members or coworkers, or maybe with your ex.
Yeah.
Right? For most of us, that's because we were just never taught or modeled healthy boundaries earlier in our lives.
Yeah.
But it's not too late to educate yourself around the importance of boundaries and how you can take some new steps to integrate boundaries into your life and with your kids, regardless of how old they are or how much power they currently have.
Yeah.
The Boundaries series of books by Cloud and Townsend are really great resources, and we'll put some links in the show notes for the Boundaries resources. They've got a great book for you if you've got younger kids, as well as one that's all about boundaries with teens.
It's really good.
And so we'll put a link also to episode 73 called 4 Simple Principles for Setting Healthy Boundaries with Kids. So those are some doable action steps that you can actually take now. You can hop in and listen to that episode, read one of the books, and start to get some clarity about what boundaries really are.
Yeah.
So just getting some basic education around boundaries is a great first step. Definitely do that.
Yeah. Now, the next thing you can do is intentionally choose to conquer your fears and find the courage to reclaim your parental authority. Now, there are a lot of reasons why parents find themselves in this challenging situation, and we've talked about how single parenthood can easily set the stage for this. And there are plenty of reasons parents avoid the process of setting clear, healthy boundaries. You know, sometimes it just seems easier to rationalize or excuse the kid's behavior.
Sometimes it usually feels easier.
And just continue to sort of relinquish control over to the kids rather than face the fear that will come with holding the line, right? Parents might also feel it's too risky. They might believe their relationship with their kids is fragile and it could be negatively impacted by any kind of change that they might try to make with their parenting. But the truth is, when it comes to parenting, the easy way usually isn't the best way.
Isn't that a bummer of a principle? But it's so true.
It is. And, you know, I've been there. I was definitely what we call a paralyzed parent in the beginning of our blended family journey. And it caused a lot of stress and conflict between you and I, honey, right?
Yep.
And if you really want to understand more about this and start that process of breaking free from your paralysis, we'll put a link in the show notes to a blog I wrote called 2 Simple Steps to Move Past Paralyzed Parenting. We really need to do an episode on that soon, I think.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, it's pretty common. And maybe that blog will encourage you to start taking steps to move forward and beyond that. You know, and back in episodes 59 and 60, I go into some pretty deep detail around how I was able to face the risks and move beyond my fears. It's called Why Are You Stuck in a Parent-Child Allegiance? That's the name of the first episode.
Yeah.
That was actually a series we did, but there are some risks, right, that you'll need to be willing to take if you want to reclaim your parental authority. But I finally realized that the risks were worth taking and that my biggest fears were actually pretty irrational. Because when I did step up and face those fears, it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be, honestly. Yeah. None of my fears came to fruition. So you might want to go back and listen to those episodes if you're struggling with your own tough emotions and they're holding you back from reclaiming your parental authority. And we'll put a link in the show notes to the first part of that series around parent-child allegiances.
Yep.
Now, I want you to know this is hard work. And like I said, it takes courage. You might need to work with a counselor that can help you process through some of those difficult emotions and move beyond your fear, your guilt, or whatever might be holding you back and keeping you stuck.
Yeah.
Doing some therapeutic work around this was very helpful for me, and it gave me some clarification around what was really going on inside and how I could manage those difficult emotions and still move forward to be the parent that I really wanted to be.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, if you've decided that things need to change in your home and you're ready to reclaim your parental authority, set healthy boundaries, make that power shift in your home, but you just aren't sure how to go about it, we encourage you to get some help so that you can move forward with confidence and build your skills. This is hard work, and you're going to need some support, some knowledge, and an openness to trying something new.
Yes.
And it's best when parents are able to find that balance of loving your kids well and firmly using your parental authority to guide and correct them appropriately. This is really called authoritative parenting. And all the research shows that the best outcomes for kids on every front comes when they're raised using that authoritative parenting style.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can do it. All right. So the next thing that you can do, our next do, is to move from permissive parenting to authoritative parenting.
Yep.
And this is a process I went through with my daughter, but I did need help, like many parents do, because I didn't yet have this skill as a parent. And it's okay if you don't have that skill set. I got the help I needed from the Love and Logic parenting method. I learned the skills I needed to love Annika well by giving her empathy and care. And at the same time, I stepped up into my role as parent and guided her using healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
I was able to transform my parenting style and eventually reclaim healthy authority as her mom.
Yeah, you really did. I got to watch that transformation.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool.
And honestly, this was one of the best things I did for our family as a whole. I'm sure you'd agree with that, honey.
Yeah, I do.
But it was also best for Annika. She needed me to be her mom, not her buddy. And she actually responded very well to the Love and Logic method. She really did.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to say this process was easy for me. It was an intentional investment that took time, energy, and dedication. But we believe that any parent can make this kind of shift in their parenting, even when the kids are older and if these patterns have been going on for a long time.
Yeah, totally. You know, in fact, it wasn't that long ago. We had one couple that we were coaching, and they'd been struggling with this kind of issue throughout their 13-year marriage.
Yeah.
And most of the kids were grown adults, and they were living out of the house now, but they still had one child living under their roof who's, you know, heading into young adulthood.
Yep.
And this young adult child has had a lot of power and control in the home, specifically over mom and her decisions around parenting.
Right.
When they reached out to us, they were kind of at the end of their rope. They were on the verge of thinking about, gosh, is this even going to work? And they were struggling with a parent-child allegiance that had been going on far too long. And it really stemmed into her permissive parenting style.
Yes, it came from that.
Yeah, the husband was frustrated with how the home was being held hostage by this kid. And the wife was at a loss around what to do to make things better.
Yeah, those were his actual words.
Mm-hmm.
So we're being held hostage.
Yeah, so we had the privilege of starting to coach them around a lot of the things that we discussed in last week's episode, as well as what we're talking about today. Mm-hmm. They've really been engaging in the learning process. Like, that's been awesome to watch how willing they are to learn and grow and try some new things.
And they've made it a priority.
Totally. And they're working really hard to make positive changes and get united as a parenting team. Mm-hmm. You know, the mom's really been stepping up and becoming more of an authoritative parent to her son. And the dynamics in the home are starting to change, really for the better. Yeah. You know, they came to us as kind of a desperate attempt to fix some of the problems and ease their pain. And we were clear about the work that was going to be required if they really wanted things to improve in their home. They've been at it for several months now, and their hard work is starting to pay off. Mm-hmm. Their son's responding mostly positively to the shift. Right. Not always, right? It's never up and to the right always, right? It's never perfect.
There's going to be some pushback.
That's right. But the new boundaries are being delivered with love and care. Mm-hmm. And so this mom has been facing her fears and working through her own insecurities. Her husband's been patient. He's been supportive. It's not perfect. They've still had a little conflict, but they're working through it. And they're really readjusting both of their expectations.
Right.
This couple is just one example that's living proof that you can make healthy, positive, and meaningful changes in the relational dynamics of your home when you're willing to engage in new learning and do the work.
Absolutely.
And we can tell our own story in that similar fashion and countless other couples that we've gotten to work with. You can do this.
Yeah. So if you're ready for a shift in the parenting in your home, but you need help to build your skill and your confidence, we encourage you to find a parenting method that's focused on authoritative parenting, and then dive into the process of learning that method. For us, it was Love and Logic, but there are a few others out there. Mm-hmm. And then commit to the change you want to experience. Yeah. You've got to practice what you're learning and be willing to fail and pick yourself up and try again and again.
That's right.
Until you're able to use your parental authority in a loving way. And this is really about gaining the tools you need to change your parenting approach. Mm-hmm. It's not about fixing the kids or forcing them to comply. Because the truth is, you can't expect to see any change in the kids' behaviors until you choose to change your approach around how you're parenting them and how you're responding to those behaviors.
Yeah.
Change will come eventually, but only when you can stick with what you need to do. And only when you don't give up or give in, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So we'll put a link in the show notes to the Love and Logic resources. They've got all kinds of books and classes and online courses for parenting younger kids and teenagers. But do a little research and find a method or a resource that works for you. Just be sure that it's focused on authoritative parenting style that's both loving and firm. You want to have that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way you just talk about patience and not giving up, being tenacious. You know, I think about like when we all learn how to ride a bike. If the very first time we fell off the bike, we just said, well, that's it. I'm done. Not doing that. It doesn't work. It's, this tool doesn't work. Then we would never have the experience and fun of actually riding a bike. And, even when we've been at it for a while, sometimes the unexpected happens.
Yeah.
I like to bike and I have those, clips that you clip in.
Right.
And I mean, it was only a couple of years ago that I was at an intersection and I couldn't get my clip out. And guess what? I fell over.
You biffed it.
I didn't chuck my bike into the ditch and say, well, forget that. I'm never riding a bike again. I biffed it and I just had to get up and dust myself off and go, okay, I'm going to try this again. And figuring this stuff out, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
We want to throw out the tool when we experience the pain. But the truth is we're going to experience pain along the way, and we got to keep at it, and we got to keep at it, and we got to keep at it.
Yeah, expect setbacks, but that doesn't mean you can't keep pushing forward.
That's right. And really, if we do that, the benefits for your stepfamily can be huge. And the reason we can say that with confidence is because we've seen so many blended families struggling and hurting because of a dynamic called a parent-child allegiance. This is what usually develops when a bio parent gets stuck in permissive parenting and has lost some of that parental authority. At that point, the couple is actually disabled within these dynamics because the parent will tend to choose their kids and put them first, and they feel trapped in that either or position. I either have to choose my kids or my spouse, and since my kids have a lot of power and control over my decisions, it's just easier to choose them.
Yeah.
But that means that my spouse gets left in the dust, feeling dismissed and deprioritized. They get stuck as the stranded stranger, and they're just kind of left out there floundering. Instead, a bioparent needs to focus on a both-and approach, meeting the needs of both the kids and the new spouse. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
But when they aren't able to do that and they stay trapped in permissive parenting, the marriage ultimately suffers.
It will.
And if you want to know more about that parent-child allegiance and how to break free from that, we mentioned these episodes before, but you can go back and check out episode 59 and 60 called Why Are You Stuck in a Parent-Child Allegiance? And if you're the partner stuck on the outside of your spouse's allegiance with their kids, you can check out episodes 61 and 62, How to Partner Well as a Step-Parent, even if you feel stuck on the outside.
Yeah.
So go check those out. Those are some other resources you can dig into.
Okay, if you're still not convinced, let me offer a bit of motivation around all of this.
All right.
Because I know how challenging it can be to change how you've been parenting, maybe for years. And you might be listening right now with that knot in your stomach tightening as you're thinking about holding a more firm line with your kids.
Yeah.
First, I want you to carefully consider this question. How does permissive parenting impact children? You might want to Google that.
Yeah.
You know, discovering the answer to this question was an important realization for me. I learned that every child needs consistent, firm, and loving parental guidance. They need a trusted parent who's willing to set and enforce appropriate limits and teach their kids values, character traits, and necessary life skills. This is crucial to children's development and to their overall success in life. And even though they may not like them,
they probably won't.
They
like
won't.
Them, yeah.
No. Appropriate limits and structure make children feel secure and loved.
Yeah, over the long term.
That's the truth.
Right.
After researching this question, how does permissive parenting impact children? I realized that I cared too much about my daughter to let her grow up without learning the value of healthy, appropriate boundaries. This is an important concept in life.
Yeah.
And I knew back then that I wasn't the kind of mom I really wanted to be, that I needed to reclaim my parental authority in a healthy way, even if I had to face the risks and experience discomfort and work through my guilt and fear and make the effort to learn new parenting skills, right? This was just too important. I wasn't going to allow my emotions to impact how I parented because I knew that in the bigger picture, it could be detrimental to my daughter and to our family if I didn't make some changes.
Right.
My fear of what could happen if I didn't step up and do something different became greater than my original worries that were rooted in guilt and fear.
Yeah.
I also didn't want to feel guilt and regret later for not being the mom that I knew my daughter really needed. I actually became very aware that nothing was going to change until I changed. And that's when I decided to get to work. Now, if you're stuck in permissive parenting, you can do something different. If I can do it, so can you.
Yeah.
So there's your motivational speech for all the do's that we just talked about. You can do this.
Yeah, so those are doable do's that'll help you to move forward toward reversing this power struggle dynamic. The first one is educate yourself around healthy boundaries. You got to discover why they're so important and how you can begin setting and enforcing them in your home. And to get started, we'll put a link to episode 73 called 4 Simple Principles for Setting Healthy Boundaries with Kids. Next, you want to choose to conquer your fears and find that courage to reclaim your parental authority. It's a must if you want to move forward and break those unhealthy patterns. And then you'll need to take steps and move from permissive parenting to authoritative parenting and find the help you need in order to master those new parenting skills and really stick with it consistently in your home.
Yep, doable do's.
That's right, doable do's. Now, let's talk about a few don'ts as well. First of all, don't avoid this issue.
No.
When kids wield their power and act out when they feel threatened, some parents will think, oh, it's just a phase and my kid will outgrow this. Or they claim that their kids are just spirited, right? When really they're being disrespectful and hurtful. Parents might feel that their child's a victim and could be compelled to protect them from any and all discomfort in life. And while it may be true that our kids have experienced some loss and hurt through this whole process, it can be argued that they're the victim in the overall situation. I understand that. But the reality is, when you respond to your child as if they're a victim, then over time, they're going to learn to act like a victim rather than learning resilience, character, and self-control.
Yeah, you're actually keeping them stuck.
Exactly. Now, maybe you're a parent who just doesn't want your high expectations or ideals challenged. Maybe we're just having a hard time acknowledging the reality around this situation. Or maybe we're just embarrassed about the way our kids are acting, or even how we've had a struggle with this. Or other parents just simply don't want to go through the effort of disciplining or learning these new parenting skills. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy. Whatever might be behind that avoidance, it's actually robbing you of being the parent your kids need and eroding the healthy parental authority you really want to hold. And in turn, that keeps you from setting your marriage up for success, because in many ways, it undermines the family system.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's important to understand. I mean, really take it from me. I used to be the queen of avoidance.
You had a crown and everything.
I did. I'm also the master of rationalizing away anything that I didn't want to deal with, right? I've had that pattern.
Yeah.
What I finally came to realize is that avoidance doesn't solve problems. It's that simple. It only makes things worse. And if you choose to ignore this particular issue, things will most likely get worse.
Yeah.
We've seen it happen in many blended families we've met over the years. And it could have easily destroyed our family, honestly, if I hadn't decided that I needed to take action.
Sure.
So don't avoid this. And I'll just be really direct here, because this is just so important. Nothing is going to change for your family if you don't do something different. You've got to take action. And if you're feeling stuck, please reach out and schedule a free coaching call with us. We've been in this challenging place, and we've helped others to navigate through it with more clarity, more confidence, and even building more connection as a couple. And we'd be happy to support you in getting unstuck and moving forward. You can take those steps.
Totally.
Okay, so let's move on to another don't.
Okay.
And this is don't overreact to pushback. When your kids lash out, when they complain or respond disrespectfully, your reaction to their behavior will either feed the power struggle or disable it.
That's a great statement. And I love how you said when your kids lash out or complain. Yeah, it's not if, it's when.
You know, the truth is that your kids won't respect your authority unless you first and foremost respect yourself and stand firm in your position as the parent. Don't allow their harsh words or threats or tantrums to push your buttons, okay? That might be what they're used to and what they're counting on, right?
Sure,
They know how to get what they want out of you. Instead, learn to respond well in those moments. And if you're thinking, well, that sounds great, but how do I actually do that? You can get started by listening to a couple different episodes that we released a while back. You might want to check out episode 17. It's called 6 Simple Steps That Will Help You Respond to Disrespect. That's a lot of a lot of alliteration. And episode 28, What If You Think Is Defiance Is Actually Something Else? And that one's all about understanding counter will and steering clear of power struggles with your kids. And we'll put links to those in the show notes for you. And keep in mind that your parenting today affects the kind of adult your child will become in the future. That's just a reality. We need to learn how we can tolerate our kids' objections and not take it personally when they push back. Now, it can be helpful to remember that there's a difference between a child's complaint and criticism.
Oh, that's good.
Just because your child has a complaint because things are changing doesn't mean they're criticizing you as a person or as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
If you can tolerate the complaint and ride out the storm by emotion coaching the child through their difficult emotions, right? Mm-hmm. You're choosing to lovingly support them well without giving in to their demands.
Yeah.
But if you choose to internalize their complaints as personal criticism, you might start to doubt your new action plan, lose your confidence, and give up your authority by backsliding into old ways. And you know what? Every time you backslide, you're sending the wrong message to the kids and feeding into their sense of power and control over all of your parenting decisions.
Yep.
Now, you're going to want to expect that your kids are going to have complaints.
Yep.
My daughter certainly had complaints throughout our blending process, especially when I started doing things differently with parenting. But I had to decide that I would handle her complaints with care and with healthy boundaries.
Sure.
We need to be careful that complaints don't get blown out of proportion and that we don't take them on as personal criticisms and cave in.
Yeah, I agree.
The reality is we all have things in life that we don't like sometimes, and it's okay if our kids need to express how they're feeling through complaints or grumbling, or they might even resort to threats.
That's true.
But it does not have to stop you from stepping up and following through with your action plan of authoritative parenting. Your kids need you to be a good example of strength and conviction around the important things in life. So choose to be that example and remain firm even when your kids complain. You can handle it, and you can do it in a loving, caring way by using emotion coaching throughout.
That's right. So our don'ts, we don't want to avoid.
No.
We don't want to overreact when the kids push back and express some complaints. And in the midst of all that, we don't want to confuse healthy boundaries with rigid boundaries.
Yes.
Now, if you've realized that you've been a bit permissive and now you're starting to feel convicted about that, it can sometimes be tempting to swing that parenting pendulum way over to the other extreme. And some parents will then start to adopt a rigid boundary approach, thinking that, okay, well, like here's one example. Now I just always need to side with or lean toward my spouse.
I need to choose them now.
Yeah, right. Now, eventually that kind of approach is going to backfire on you. You know, Kim mentioned a bit ago that this is a both and approach, and healthy boundaries will be flexible. They're going to be full of empathy. They're going to be based in reality, and they're going to honor the needs of everyone in the family. Now, that's a whole subject for another episode. But if I just struck a chord in you there, you might want to go check out episode 27, How to Set Clear Boundaries and Safeguard Relationships, or episode 73, 4 Simple Principles for Setting Healthy Boundary with Kids. And of course, we're going to put links in the show notes for you. Okay, so don't swing that pendulum way over to the other side.
No, find the right balance around boundaries.
That's right. And one more final don't before we wrap up. And this one's really centered around your own sense of identity and worth. It's for bio and step parents. You know, we talked about this with step family expert Ron Deal when we had him on the show back in episode 85. And Ron made a really insightful point around the issues of power. And we'll try to kind of rephrase what he shared, but you can always go back and listen to it straight from Ron. But basically what he says is don't care too much, right? And Ron wasn't suggesting that we stop caring about the kids. That's not at all what he's saying. What he's talking about is a position that we sometimes put ourselves into when we become overly invested in chasing the kids' affection and approval. And the result can be an imbalance of emotional power in the home, which the kids can then use to manipulate and control the adults' decisions. And it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Right? It happened for us.
Yeah. And if you're a bio parent, be mindful about your goal as a parent. If your overarching goal is to gain your child's approval, and if you're fixated on whether or not they're happy with you or agree with your choices, you've crossed an emotional line. You really haven't positioned yourself as their parent. You've positioned yourself more on being their friend.
Yeah.
And this is at the core of permissive parenting. When you care too much about what your kids think about you, their judgments and opinions, you're making parenting decisions based on that.
Yeah.
You're continually giving your parental power away. Instead, you need to focus on what's best for your kids and what they really need, which is consistent parental guidance that's firm and loving.
Right.
And you can learn how to affirm your kids and give empathy while continuing to hold healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
Here's a quick example. Let's say you've decided to set a weekly time for your fiance, we'll just call him Jesse, to come over to the house and everyone can fix dinner together and have a meal.
That sounds fun.
And you've invited your kids to be involved, but they're pushing back and saying they don't want to spend time with Jesse or want him over to the house for dinner.
Yeah.
You can calmly listen to their complaint and affirm them. You can say something like this to your kids. You don't want to spend time with Jesse. I can see how uncomfortable this is for you, and I'm sorry you're feeling upset. You don't have to eat dinner with us if you don't want to, but I will be having Jesse over every Tuesday night, and maybe someday you'll be okay about spending a little time getting to know him. But it's all right if you aren't ready for that. Now, if the child continues to express their objections or tries to make you feel guilty or second guess your decision, which
they probably will.
Yeah, they're probably used to having a lot of power and they're most likely going to do that. Then you simply repeat yourself as many times as you need to, right? Become that broken record, but do that in a calm, patient, and loving way. You don't have to convince your kids to accept your decisions, but you do need to listen, affirm, and have empathy for what they might be experiencing, even if you don't agree with them or fully understand their perspective.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, that's when kids are just complaining and expressing, you know, some challenges. If they're, you know, being blatantly disrespectful or harmful, then the boundary needs to strengthen a bit.
Then you need to take a new action.
But the principle of firm and loving still applies. No matter what.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we've got to learn skills to do that.
Yeah, what you're doing with a conversation like that is you're refusing to enter into a power struggle.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
You're not giving them, you know, that sense of control.
Absolutely. So that's great thoughts for a bio parent. Now, if you're a step parent who's been chasing after your stepkids' affection and acceptance, and you, as Ron said, care too much about pleasing them, you might have realized that you're now in a very tenuous place. Yeah. You're working really hard to win the heart of your stepkids, which of course we do encourage you to do. But if your sense of identity or your worth or your value or your personal peace in the midst of that relationship is contingent on gaining their approval, now you've crossed that emotional line.
Yeah.
This is especially difficult for step-parents because if you're chasing after your stepkids' affection, you most likely care more about pleasing them than they care about pleasing you. Yeah. Your placement in the family structure is actually lower than them when you get in that position. And this can create a lot of emotional pain for a step-parent who now feels powerless and defeated.
Absolutely.
And, you know, Ron's suggestion, if you found yourself in this position as a step-parent, is to find a way to separate your emotions and your need for the kids to care about you and instead find your identity, worth, and value somewhere else. It's a constant balancing act. You want to continue to persistently forge a path through that rejection and send those 3 important messages to the kids and speak the 5 love languages like we talked about last week. And at the same time, you need to be able to set aside your desire for them to respond in the way that you want them to. So we're still reaching out. We're still building emotional connections and bridges, but we're keeping our expectations in line and not getting over focused on what their response is.
Right.
You got to get to a place where you can relax and release that emotional investment and tension. Let go of some of those unmet expectations and your agenda so that you can maintain control of your emotions and stand firm in your identity, value, and worth, regardless of if the kids come around or not.
Yeah, because what we're dealing with here is a big gap in the motivation to love.
Sure.
You know, a step-parent comes in with a high motivation to build a relationship with their stepkids, but the kids don't have that same level of motivation to connect with them. So there's a big gap.
And as Ron says, in relationships, the person with the least amount of motivation is the one with the power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That means the kids have the power.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to impact how you feel about yourself.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So basically, you need to emotionally detach from immediate outcomes, right?
That's good.
And instead, open up yourself to the big picture perspective, right? Living in a blended family is like running a long marathon.
Yeah.
It's not a quick sprint. And there are no quick fixes for these really difficult issues. Mm-hmm. So if you get stuck in wanting or expecting too much from the kids too soon and become fixated on these immediate outcomes, you'll certainly tire and lose the stamina you need to keep running that marathon.
Right.
And when that happens, discouragement will take over and you'll most likely start to give up. You've got to find a way to endure and push through the kids' rejection and their pushback and their complaints so that you don't get lost in emotional pain and insecurity. It's the only healthy path forward.
Yeah.
So whether you're a bio or a step parent, you don't want to be that needy, desperate adult grasping for the kids' affection and approval and acceptance, right? Who falls apart emotionally when they don't respond or agree with your decisions. What your kids and your stepkids really need in their lives are adults that are emotionally stable, secure, and respectable.
Yeah.
And that might mean that you need to do some work around your insecurities and fears. But if you're able to get there, you'll be showing up for the kids with the appropriate authority, with confidence in your parental role, as well as stability, security, and respect for yourself. And then you'll be able to create an emotional environment where the kids will experience safety and you've become a trustworthy person for them in their life. That's really what you want. If you're too focused on chasing after their affections, you cannot consistently be that stable, secure, trustworthy, respectable adult that they need to guide them forward in life.
Yeah, and please don't misunderstand us here. We're not saying that you don't care about the kids' emotional struggles.
No.
We're suggesting that you deprioritize their opinions and their judgments about you, and at the same time acknowledge their difficult emotions and help them process through those.
Absolutely.
The essential skill of emotion coaching that we talked about last week is even more impactful for the kids when you yourself are in an emotionally secure place as you meet their needs and support them emotionally. So don't misread what we're saying. You know, you got to stay focused on not getting too caught up in the midst of their judgments and their opinions and the immediate response, but yet stay very open and present and loving and engaged with them. Yeah. It's a both and.
Support them emotionally.
That's right. So those are just a few don'ts for you to apply in these challenging dynamics. We talked about don't avoid, right? Don't avoid the situation. Don't overreact when there's pushback, because there will be. Don't confuse healthy boundaries with rigid boundaries. Don't swing that pendulum way over to the other side.
Right.
And as Ron says, don't care too much, right? But instead, what do we want to do?
We want to step up and choose to overcome these issues by focusing on the do's, which are all practical and doable. And we know this because we've done them ourselves. And these are actually the action steps that saved our family from imminent disaster. And I'm not exaggerating there.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. Yeah.
Now, we hope this episode has been helpful for you, Lainey, and others out there who are trying to cope with the power struggle in their home. And maybe today we were able to simply reveal why some of these painful realities might be impacting your family's ability to blend.
Yeah.
And also point you to some action-oriented next steps that can help you to regain your parental authority, become more effective in your decisions as you guide your kids through life.
Yeah, that's right. Wow, that was a lot.
Yeah.
Now, next week, we're going to shift gears a bit. We're going to have some fun. As we all head towards summer, we thought it might be great to explore some bonding ideas and share some of our favorites with you. We actually have 70 bonding ideas. Now, we're not just going to list them all next week. It's not going to be a boring list.
We're going to actually talk about bonding.
But we'll talk about some of them. We'll talk about bonding. And hopefully that can help you to get focused on creating memories and closer relationships in your family over the next few months. Yeah. So as we regain some of that parental authority, then we get to really focus on building those bonds and connections that we're really after. So we're excited to be able to share that with you. But with that, that makes today's episode a wrap.
Until next time.